Hello everyone, hope you find yourself having a great day. I've got another tutorial. This is going to be 3 or 4 different exercises in one. And what we're going to do is we're going to create we're going to do a little box modeling, simple box modeling. And the goal here is to create a animated texture rather than, some of you may know or be familiar with motion tracking in After Effects or other motion tracking applications, and where you would track points and then align textures to that to have a final composite where different elements would appear to have been originally either photographed or filmed as one. And what we're going to do is we're going to avoid the need for motion tracking totally, and instead we're going to provide an animated material within Cinema 4D to impose on a surface, an object surface, rather than trying to have to bring that into After Effects, get a good track, and then apply texture to that track. What we're going to do, I've got a sample here that I'm going to play, is a HD television that we're going to model. We're going to apply an animated texture to its surface so that it would be a TV that would appear to be playing a video. And on top of that, we're going to finish it off with a little bit of volumetric lighting, as if the TV is emitting light and illuminating the viewing area. So I'm going to play this, and you'll see that we've got a simple HD widescreen TV with a video attached and playing on it, and then you've got different volumetric lighting shining out, providing an ambience for the room. So now that we've seen that, we're going to hop into Cinema 4D, and for this exercise, because we're going to do some beveling, Cinema 4D R15 has a little bit beveling features, and even more better in Cinema 4D R16. But for this, we're going to move into R15, and we're going to begin by creating a cube, and we're going to try to keep this simple. We're going to scale this out to the approximate dimensions that a modern 16:9 widescreen TV might represent. And this isn't critical, just get it close. I'm going to thin it down just a touch, and at this point, once I'm satisfied I've got that 16:9 aspect ratio, I'm going to select my object, the cube, and I'm going to hit C to make that editable. Now I'm going to apply a couple of little bevels on the corners. We're going to go into line mode, and we're going to select the corners all the way around, just the corners. I'm doing shift click to get those individually. Lots of ways to skin this cat, lots of ways to make selections. If you know of a better one, please use it yourself. I'm not teaching experts here, I'm teaching people that want to add just something to their skill set, not necessarily render out a bunch of spheres and cubes, but maybe something that will help facilitate their careers and make things a little bit easier where you might be using Cinema 4D at your work. Okay, so I've got my corner selected, and what I'm going to do is, while they're selected, I'm going to right click and choose bevel, and I'm just going to simply click and drag to the right, and you see that I'm putting a bevel on there. Now what we've got here is we've got one subdivision, and you'll notice that it's relatively angular, so we'll just increase those subdivisions. And don't need to go overboard, but you can get you something that looks reasonable. And if we back out and get a render, you'll see we've got a nice rounded corners on this. This same procedure might be suitable for even making an iPhone or Android device or something like that. We're going to go into face selection mode, deselect everything. I'm going to select this face that's going to be representative of where we're playing our videos. And I'm going to right click, and I'm going to choose extrude inner. I'm going to come in about maybe what would be in the real world about 1.5 inches. While that's still selected, I'm going to do right click and extrude, and I'm going to bring this in maybe what in the real world might be about 1/4 inch by clicking and dragging to the left. Okay, that'll give us a little bit of a recession area where we'll be able to play videos on this screen. You see, with all these little different details, you begin to get a lot more surfaces that you can then have reflections apply from and give you a bit more realism. So I think we're looking pretty good there. We could go on the back of this and give it a little detail, but because the back's not going to be in here, why add the unnecessary geometry? If you were modeling a flat screen TV that you're going to use in other projects, you might want to give it more detail, such as a light somewhere down here, and maybe a remote infrared screen, and maybe an on-off switch, whatever you'd like, maybe a power cord drooping down off the side, or something of that nature. But we're going to try to keep it simple and fast. So I'm going to deselect everything, and I'm going to swing down to the bottom here. Rather than take a cube or a cylinder and enter it into this, I'm going to select this bottom face. I'm going to try to get a head-on view of it, something like that. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose a knife, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this into thirds, more or less. Let me get in close here. I'm going to select this edge, click and drag to where it intersects, let it go. We've made a slice. I'm going to get a visual for a reference here. I'm going to try to be the same distance off this edge. Something about like that. Alright, so we're probably not perfect, but for this exercise I think it'll be suitable. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to deselect everything with our face selection tool. Select this inner piece that we've just sliced out. Verify that we don't have anything else selected. And while we've got it selected, I'm going to do a control click and drag down to form somewhat of a pedestal for our TV. And what we can do is, let me do Control Z and undo that. I'm going to do a right click, extrude enter, and I'm going to come in a little bit like that. And then what I'm going to do is Control click and drag down. That way our pedestal wasn't as wide as our actual screen. Give again a little bit more dimension. Alright, well, we've got our bottom selected. I'm going to get one more set of polygons. I'm going to control click and drag down what might be about a 1/4 inch in the real world, or 1/2 inch. Now we're going to go into, by deselecting everything, face selection tool, we're going to go into select, oops, need to have our cube selected, go to select, loop selection, and we're going to try to get this new piece that we've just carved out here, just this piece here. Always good to rotate around. Make sure that you've got just selected what it is you have intended to select. And what we're going to do now is we are going to get our scale tool. And we're just going to control click and drag to extrude that outward. And let's get a back up here and make sure that the base that we're creating is suitable to support this TV. So we'll come out maybe a little bit more. And then with the width, we're going to do a control click and drag that out just a little bit, something about like that. Alright, now we can get fancy and we can try and bevel this or not. I think we'll just leave it for this illustration. Maybe we'll put some bevels on here because we can get light to hit this and give it a little bit more realism. We'll go into line selection mode. I'm going to select just these corners on this pedestal. Alright, we've got just our corners selected. And while they're selected, right click and choose bevel, and then just click and drag to the right a little bit. You'll see we get a little bit of rounding. Alright, so we've got some nice bevels on here. I think that'll help catch a little bit of light and add a little bit of interest to this scene. So let's get back around and make sure we're on the front here. Now here's the interesting part. What we can do is, I've got a video on my desktop that you can use, or that I'll use for this. You can use any video, you can use an image sequence. Videos work good, provided you've the aspect ratio relationship to the size of the video you're going to create a texture with. So I'm going to double click my material. I'm going to go into the color. Actually, I'm going to turn off the color. I'm going to go into the luminance, and I'm going to browse for that texture, and I've got one here, just a video, and I'll enter no. I don't want to copy that. Double click your texture and go in under the animation tab. Because this video has a little bit of an intro, I'm going to set the begin time to 1000 frames, and it will now begin playing that video at 1000 frames. Let me go back into it again here. I want a little specular because we want a little bit of a sheen occurring on this. I'm going to tell this mix mode to be add, and then with that luminance, because we've selected add, I'm going to knock it down to 1%. That way this actual video is going to emit light onto our scene. So I'll take and select my cube, make sure I have everything deselected by clicking on an empty area, my face selection mode, and I'm going to click on that area that would be the actual screen of the TV. Now with that selected, I'm going to drag my texture onto that material, or onto that face. So now what we've got is we've got our screen, which the entire area can be textured independently now. So if I give that a quick render, you'll see that we've got it already contained in here without a need for tracking. So whenever we move around, it's going to play. If I scrub through here and move to another frame and hit render, you see that it's playing on its own timeline within the Cinema 4D timeline. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm going to create a texture for this plastic of the TV. Double clicking on my materials, I'm going to pull that up. I'm going to go into my color. I'm going to change it to black. I'm going to add a reflection, and we're going to go with the typical Fresnel. With exception, we're going to change our gradient here. We're going to bring this down a little bit. We're going to bring that mixture mode down, about 50-50 on those. And if we double click our shader, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this more black than white. And hopefully we can soften that reflection here. So I'm going to grab and drag this. You'll see that it'll overwrite my texture for a moment. But that's okay. If I delete that texture from there while the face is still selected, I can drag that right back on. And you'll be able to see that we've got everything independently textured. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin lighting. Because we're going to have this projecting light from its front, it's important that we don't necessarily light the screen with some of the lights that we're about to apply. So I'm going to start by making sure I have everything deselected, and I'm going to drop in just a regular light. I'm going to move it off to the left. We're going to provide some rim lighting on the left side of this, on the right side of this. I'm going to bring it up just a little bit so we're lighting the top and the side. We might want to make sure we're just even with it, maybe a touch forward. We don't want to light that screen too much. We're going to click and drag and duplicate that, or control click and drag, sorry. And we're going to move this over about the same. Something about like that. Now we want to take these lights and knock back their power to about 60%. We're just going to knock them back a little bit and get us another render here. We're going to see we're going to start getting some lighting happening, a little bit of edge lighting happening on both of these, and as well a little bit on the top. This is going to be important to provide a little depth and a little bit of realism. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to drop in a plane. This is going to be representative of our floor, and I'll drag that guy down. I'm going to go into the front view and just line that up with the base. Guys, if this is going too fast, just hit pause and rewind. This is for you, not for me. And I try to go at a reasonable pace. Sometimes I get a little bit fast. So I'm going to stretch this guy out, and we're going to stretch it out pretty good. I'm going to go to that top view again. We don't want to see the edges, so we're going to go way on out with this, and then way on out with this. Alright, now we're going to use a very similar material to what we use to texture our TV. I'm going to select it, control, click, and drag, and make a copy. We're going to go in here on that floor, and with the reflection, we want some reflection on the floor, but not near as much. I'm going to go back in here and manipulate that slider back over. We're going to want to try to get that back to its normal reflective aspect here. That looks pretty good. So we're going to drag that onto our plane that we've created. We've got some reflection. Okay, let's go back into that. We're going to turn it down a little bit. Okay, so we've got a little subtle reflection. We'll probably even go less than that. Let me try to bring that back. Actually, bring it off to the left here. Okay. There we go. That's more like what we're looking for. Now, we've got our lights up here, and they're lighting our floor. We only want them to light our TV. So, here's what we'll do. We need to know the name of the floor, and we're just know that it's a plane. We're going to double click that and call it floor. And with our first light selected, we're going to go under project, and we're going to tell it objects to exclude. We're going to drag the floor in there, and then we're going to select our other light, and we're going to make note for the floor in there. So they're lighting the TV but not the floor, and we'll be able to see this again if we go right here. Alright, so next we're going to create a spotlight. We'll rotate this guy so that it's facing down 90 degrees, and we're going to kick it back about 20 degrees in this direction. So if I go up top, I'm going to move that light. I'm hoping I'm getting the front here. Yeah, I went to the front. We're going to move it up. And our goal here is to illuminate our TV with that spotlight. You can play with the different angles on that cone. And so we've got this going on right here. Let's take a look at it. Now, here's what we want here. We want to light the floor but not the TV. So we just did that. We're going to go ahead and we'll just rename this TV just for simplicity. And we've got our light here. We want to exclude the TV. We do want to provide shadows. So if we render this out, you'll see we're lighting the floor, but we're not lighting the TV, yet we're getting shadows. Okay, it's important if we do use that light to create shadows that we tell it to cast shadows. I always like to bump up my resolution here and knock the density down to about 80 on shadows, because 100% is just too much of a shadow. And so there we go, looking pretty good there. Now something else we can do is provide a spotlight, and once we go into the general on the spotlight, here's where it gets pretty cool. We're going to tell it the type of spotlight to be a squared parallel spotlight. And what that does is it emits the same width at its initialization point as it does at its final destination. So I'm going to rotate this guy. Hope I get this right the first time. We're at minus 90 degrees on that. I'm going to run a test render. Need to turn on volumetrics. Whoops. Volumetrics. And I don't think that I'll see what I've got. I'm back in behind that. So there we go. We're getting our volumetric lighting here that's shining from left to right. So if I render that again, you can see it's going that way, diffusing, and the fall off's happening as we leave that area. Now these are kind of tricky to shape. You've got to go under the coordinates here and play. See how it's shaping uniformly? You can try a shift click or control click, and you just don't get the type of behavior that you want typically. So what I'll do is I'll go into this particular view, and we're going to try to line it up with our areas that we've made our first extrudes. And I'm going to take this, I'll take it down to, I'm going to try to take this one up to 1.2. Maybe we need to go down 0.7 or 0.8. See, these are kind of tricky to get lined up. Sometimes this is the best view, but you want to be just so that you intersect it and then back out just until it's visible. Now our goal is to get the height the same as the height of our screen, and our width the same as the width of our screen. So if we can go 0.9, we're getting close, 0.92, that's looking pretty good. On, let's go 2, go back to 1 on that, we'll go to 2 on that. So we're a little bit wide still. Let's go to 1.5. We need to go a little wider, 1.7. a little too wide, so we'll go to 1.6. Oops. 1.6. We're getting close. Getting real close. I'm going to call that acceptable. Okay, so we're going to get a little preview of this. If I render that, you'll see that we're full-blown, wide open with the intensity of that light. And you see, I think we're looking pretty good there. So let's go back into that light under its visibility. And we're going to make a little bit of setting here. We're going to knock this down to about 15%. Render that guy out there. Look at it from a few different angles. Sometimes if you're inside the cone, it's kind of weird. If you stay above it, it gives it a little bit more believability. And 15% might even be too much. I'm going to go down to, let's go down to 8, about half of that. And now we're getting a little bit more believability. Alright. Looks good from the sides, all of our different angles. So we're casting light out of there. We're actually illuminating the scene with the luminance channel provided in the video. And there's that. So all that's really left to do at this point is to drop in a camera, hop in that camera, and figure out the route that you want to navigate around that's going to give you the best of everything. It's going to give you the best reflections. Here, that's one thing I overlooked. Let's create a reflection real quick. If you have nothing to reflect, you'll not get any reflections. So I'm going to drop in a plane. I'm going to knock its segments down to 0, 0, which is 1 and 1. We're going to scale this out pretty wide and relatively tall. I'm going to double click down here, create a new material, turn off its specular, turn off its color, and under the luminance channel we're going to check that and we're going to leave it just as you see it. Drag that onto our plane, and we're going to move our plane on back here significant amount. And with that, we'll pull it on back about right here. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees. Shift and rotate. Get that 90. Okay. And then we're going to bring it up so that it's just above the ground. This way we might get a little bit of top and bottom reflection. Alright. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one final light. This is going to provide a little bit of front lighting on this whole scene. Bring it up a little bit. And I'm going to tell this light to be at about 80% strength. We're going to tell it to provide a shadow, a soft shadow. We're going to knock that density of the shadow down to about 80%. Alright, bump up its resolution to about 750. Get a quick test render. Now what we don't want to light is we don't want to light the floor. So if we take that light and we go into its project information, we can drag that floor into there, and we're going to still see the result of our overhead spotlight that's casting on our TV set. So really all that's left is to take our camera that we're in it, right? We're going to go to what we want to be our first frame, get ourselves set up here. Make sure we're rewound, enter a keyframe. I'm going to move forward about 250-ish, and we'll swing on around. I'm going to come up. I'll give another one here. Move on into 600, and maybe get another little bit of a parallax going there, and add a final keyframe. So when we play this, if I were to pause it, give a quick render, you see that we're sending out that light that's projecting from that TV, and you'll see how it changes just depending on where we're at. And something else you can do to give this a little more believability is go into the light. Let's rewind here. I'm going to that light. I'm sorry, make sure we've got the right light selected here. We need to have this. Get out of my camera, make sure I've got the right light. Kind of tricky finding it sometimes. Yep, that's the one. We're going to take that light and we're going to go into its visibility, and that brightness we're going to keyframe it. We're going to begin at keyframe 1. We're going to leave it at a brightness of 8. We're going to increment about 10, 15, 20 frames. So we're going to go move a few frames up that to about 12. Control click the brightness. Move forward a few more. Lower it to about 10. Control click the brightness. Move forward a little bit more. 25. Let's give it a big bright flicker there. We'll move forward a little bit more. Knock it back down to 5. Control click. Move forward. Try to find a happy average, about 10 again. Control click. Just keep moving through this. 5. Control click. Maybe something weird like 12. Control click. And just keep doing this through here. Control click. This is going to give some deviation on the colors or the brightness that's being emitted out of that TV screen, so that you would see as if you were in a room. Had a little mist, a little smoke, a little haze going on. You'd be able to see that the intensity of that light being broadcast is changing as the scenes and brightness of the scenes change. So finish up with that, and let's rewind here. We'll hop back into our camera. We're at 12% on our first frame. Okay, we'll move forward a little bit, and we're at 10. Let's see what we got there. A little bit different. And you can play with these. You can play with the color based on the scene even. Is you can go in and under the general, you've got your color here that you can keyframe as well. So if one scene contains a little bit more blue or a little bit more green or yellows or whatnot, keyframe in just a slight subtle hue change on that particular scene that you're in, and get just a lot more believability that way. So this is one I hope to help you guys. I hope it's something that you'll find useful, and you can incorporate in your upcoming projects. This is also good for scenes where you have sunlight emitting into a room, or light casting in perhaps in the interior of a car. Candles, you can shape these out differently and have light being illuminated on a wall, so that you can see where the light's casting and hitting in a localized area rather than lighting an entire room or entire area. So hope you find it useful, and remember, if you'd like to see future videos, please subscribe, and talk to you later. Bye bye.